So let's start the meeting of the Montpelier-Roxbury Board of School Directors at 6:30. And the first order of business is public comment. Have any members of the public? Are there some folks on the screen?
Jim, can you clarify if people have come to speak about their candidacy, is this their chance to speak, for the visioning committee?
Yes. No, we can have I'm going to add visioning committee to the agenda, and we can give a separate couple minutes if people want to speak. I know that there was not a requirement to speak. And so we can actually probably, let's put that at the beginning of the board discussion so people don't have to get through the meeting no longer than they have to.
Yep.
Yeah. Any non-candidacy, and actually since my eyes are not as stellar as they were in my youth.
I got you, Jim. Nobody's raising their hand.
If someone just wants to shout out, otherwise it sounds like we don't have anyone. Okay, great.
No, there is.
Where? Oh, okay.
Kristen,
go ahead. Yes, okay.
Hi, how are you? My name is Kristen. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm a resident of Montpelier, and I just wanted to express my hope that the board will encourage the governor to use those surplus education funds for education, as opposed to a rebate for homeowners. I feel that pitting homeowners against school children was probably not the best thing to do. And I think if anyone deserves a rebate in this time, it's these kids who have really lost out in education. And it's a one-time opportunity, and I would hope that the school board would be the advocates for school children, because they don't have a voice in our government right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Eva has their hand up.
Eva, okay. Okay.
Hi, thanks everyone. My name is Eva Zaret. I'm a public health specialist at Central Vermont Medical Center, and I'm here tonight with Dr. Mark Detman. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Mark Detman. I'm an ER doctor at CVMC. I've been there for almost 15 years now, and I've got a particular focus on alcohol and drug dependence and the treatment of that. I'm part of the coalition that Eva's going to mention to you. We offer 24/7 services to people looking for help with alcohol and drug dependence. But that's not why I'm here tonight. I'm here tonight because primary prevention is one of our prime motives, and primary prevention starts in schools and homes. So let Eva take over.
Great, thanks, Mark. Let me lower my hand. It's distracting. So like Mark said, we both work for CVMC, but we're also here representing the Central Vermont Prevention Coalition, or CVPC, which is an interdisciplinary collaboration of professional organizations and agencies working in the fields of drug and alcohol prevention, harm reduction, treatment, recovery. We also have representation from restorative justice and law enforcement and housing and youth services. So a wide range of folks are at the table. And the hospital serves as the backbone member of the coalition. The coalition's mission over the past 7 years is to create a harmonized and stigma-free system of care in Central Vermont, where there's no wrong door or wrong time to get help for substance use disorders or addictions to drug and alcohol, and to prevent the initiation of substance use, like Mark said. The reason that we're here tonight is to let you know about a series of virtual community forums that we're doing across Central Vermont that are organized by Supervisory Union. So we held our first one last month for Central Vermont Supervisory Union, which is sort of the Northfield, Orange area. And it was a real success. And our next one is slated for the Montpelier-Roxbury School District on March 8th at 6 p.m. It was previously in February, right in the middle of February break. So we decided to move it to March. And we're here asking for your help in promoting the event to your school communities, including parents, staff, teachers, administrators, and students, because a lot of what we'll be talking about that night focuses on primary prevention in youth. I just want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about the forums and then answer any questions you have. So at the forum, we bring a panel of experts from some of our partner organizations to let people know about resources that are available in Central Vermont for drug and alcohol related issues. And they're also available for a Q&A. Then we center the conversation around primary prevention in youth and young adults. And we share data that's specific to your region, because even though Vermont is a small state, and even though Central Vermont's a relatively small region, students really differ from school district to school district or supervisory union to supervisory union. So for example, in one school district, we might be concerned that students have low rates of thinking that vaping is harmful or that their parents think it's bad. While in Montpelier, that's not really what we're concerned about. Here, we're more concerned about some things like higher use rates when compared to the state average for drinking alcohol, attending school under the influence, being sold illegal drugs on campus, even some cocaine use, among other things. So once we sort of set the stage and really focused it in this hyper-regional way, we move into the open forum for community members, where we as professionals learn about what they see as issues, strengths, opportunities, and primary prevention. And we move into actions that we think that the community could take based on our analysis of the data, like I mentioned before. So they're really specific to Montpelier. And we also elicit ideas from the community so that these ideas are community born and community driven. And at the end of the night, we make sure that folks are connected so they know how to take action when the forum is over. So that's a look at what we're planning on doing. It is going to be virtual. Again, we'd appreciate any support that you can give us in promoting an event like this. It's really important. Students and people around Vermont are really struggling with substance use during the pandemic, including a lot of co-occurring mental health and substance use issues. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have or give you a little more info if you need it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other public comment? I've not seen any hands.
Can I just add, Eva, do you have a wish list? Do you have a wish list for this group as to what they might be able to do to help us broadcast this a bit?
Other supervisory unions have been able to do things like put an announcement in a school newsletter or put something on a website. These are things that would be really helpful for us, helping us share the event. We have a Facebook event, helping share that on social media can be helpful. And any other avenues that you have for getting information out to parents, staff, and students.
So if you have a contact person that we could reach out to with that information, that would be fantastic.
Yep, Eva and sorry, Dr. Gutman on this call is Anna Hipko, who's my executive assistant, and she deals with all of our communication. She's also our communications director. So Anna is the best person to reach out to with those kind of things.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Great. Emma?
Can I just add that it would be great if you could email, my email address is on the website, Emma Bay Hansen, but we have access to some face groups and stuff that Anna doesn't. Anna does a great job with promoting events. We can share what Anna shares, but it might be nice to share a direct link to the event. If you could include me on that email, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and again, if you go to the if you go to the MRPS website, there's a section for the board and it has everybody's email on the board. Amanda?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your work and thank you for coming here to bring this information. And we will make sure to share it also with the parents groups who are also disseminate this information. So on the MRPS website, there's a MRPS, well, Emma will send you the link to Jillian. Thank you for coming.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank Thanks, folks.
Yeah, no, thank you. Very informative. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda, which includes minutes of the policy committee meetings, superintendent evaluation committee meetings, equity committee meetings, school board meetings, and warrants and accounts payable, acknowledging the receipt of the 21 audit. Superintendent's report, draft agenda for February 16, approving policy D7, special ed, co-curriculars and contracts.
I have a question about an item on there, so I'm not sure if that's to make a motion with one item pulled. It's a really quick question.
Yeah.
On the co-curricular contract, it looked like something that we'd already created a position for. I just wondered why that was separate from the theater and it's for a choreography.
That was not part of the position.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
created for.
Thank you.
And I still need a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion in addition to Jill's question? Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So as I said earlier, we're adding, oh, hi, Kristen, how are you?
Hi, everybody.
We are going to add appointments to the visioning committee to the list. We got several great candidates, both from the community and from students. We're also part of the community, but adult community members and student community members. We have, I think, more applicants than there are positions for both. My thought after talking to Nathan is that we choose the number that we slotted for adults and give those who we don't choose the option of being an alternate, but they don't get a stipend. And I would like to include all the students if possible and just make them all alternates. And also we have to kind of deal with the stipend. I think we only have stipend for people on the committee, but my inclination is to, try to give all the students some opportunity to be involved. We got, a great slate. And we can expand the number as well. But we can also, can and I think should go into executive session to make those choices, just so we can have discussion off camera. But let's open the board discussion with that item and with the opportunity for anyone who submitted a letter of interest who also might want to say some words to, this is your opportunity to speak if you want to. Again, we did not require it, and there's no need to, and we will, consider your application without any prejudice if you do not.
So should we raise our hand?
Yeah. So please use the raise hand function, and if you can't use the raise hand function, turn your camera on and physically raise your hand. Excellent. I don't see any either. Just question for the board in terms of, do we want to do this selection now and then come back to the discussion about our meeting with legislators and some follow-up there, or do you want to wait a little later for executive session? I think in this room we could probably turn the camera off, get enough people to leave and turn it to the executive session room.
It seems like we have a couple people who are listening on for that legislative piece.
Okay.
I can't tell who's in attendance. And we can only see a list of 4 people in our view. So if there's a bunch of candidates who are also on, then
I'm not sure if there are.
I don't know if there are. Okay, let's have our board discussion and then go into executive session. just so people who are interested can hear. Yeah, so at our last board meeting, we met with legislators. They brought up, I think, some great issues. I know there was a expressed desire to continue the discussion around the ed fund surplus. There are also some desire to have further discussion around equity. I know that it's not mentioned on the agenda. I've communicated with both Amanda, Emma, and I think Emma, you're going to reach out to
It's
the
called
Equity Policy Committee.
the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity.
Okay.
They have somebody lined up to come speak at our meeting on the 16th.
Okay, so we'll be hearing more about that 16th. Also, as you noted, there are several boards that have supported, I think,
Yeah,
the proposal.
there's about 25 school districts, and so this is about the pupil weighting, the weighting proposals that are in the legislature right now under consideration. And so after the legislators presented to us at the last meeting, I felt like I was not understanding all of the options that had been presented and that were going to be up for a vote. So I wanted to understand those options a little bit better. And once I did my research, I sort of realized I think there's an opportunity for us as a school district to be timely in our support of one of those proposals. And it does seem like the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity has done a lot of work. They've been doing it for years, advocating for what will be the most equitable for the most students in the state of Vermont. And, we heard the reference to winners and losers during our legislative presentation. And Amanda brought up that maybe that's not the best way to look at it. And I feel like a district like Montpelier is in a particularly well-poised spot to sort of make a statement, because a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, would perceive us as losers in some of these scenarios that are being presented. And I don't see it that way personally. And I think that as a district, it would be as a school board, it would be powerful for us to sort of stand up for what's the most equitable for the most kids in Vermont versus what's going to be best for our taxpayers, in Montpelier. So I see it as an opportunity to sort of stand with doing what's right for the most people in Vermont versus doing, seeing it as a sort of winner and loser situation. So I'd like us all to sort of delve into the materials a little bit more and understand the options that are on the table. And then if we see it as being, something that we all can agree to, I think it would be great for us to join the coalition as a school board. There's 25 school districts, school boards or school districts that are signed on. And so we could join that group of folks.
Okay.
The board should also know I was asked to testify on this on Friday. So I will be testifying to the legislature on Friday. They're interested in us because of our not small, but not large EL population.
Right.
And the influence and just our opinion on the whole thing. So Grant and I have been working on that testimony.
May I ask what your position is?
My position is they're gonna change the way equalized pupil is handled. So it's not, to me, it's not a winner or loser. It's just how it happens. Either of the suggestions are a significant tax increase on our citizens. And so I think what Grant and I came down, and I want to speak for Grant, but is we hope that they do a transition period, obviously, so we can, do this in a gradual way and don't get hit by I think I saw it was like $3 million additional tax burden with either model. It's a $3 million plus. So it's significant. So they could do that over time. I personally, and Grant, I think would agree with me, the grant model, in all honesty, the Agency of Education does a really good job at making those incredibly burdensome for schools, and it could very well create a siloed system, much like special education has in the past. So I am not a huge fan of adding any more
Grants?
grants that the AOE runs. Because honestly, too, if it's an additional burden, more so than it already is, I don't think the taxpayers will like us wanting to add grant managers onto the tax burden as well. So I'm not a fan of the grant idea. As Grant said, the equalized pupil piece is very complex, but it's what we do now to make budgets. So it's a known entity. So let's get that right, would be my opinion on it. The legislator needs to know that, because of Montpelier's beautiful welcoming of Afghan refugee families, we have 12 new English learners coming who are in our schools, and they weren't here on October 1 for that count. And so, and that's a significant impact on our system. So, I want to give them the realities of what we have. In addition to that, and then I'll stop. This school in particular is influenced by this conversation because it's a school of below 40 pupils. And that has some impact on us and our budgeting and how we think about our budgeting and whether we can sustain a small school like this. So, there's some suggestions in some of these conversations to almost incentivize schools to continue in this way, but staffing for a school like this is incredibly hard. So there's some realities that I think need to be put on the table in front of the legislators. Grant, did I capture everything that we were talking about?
Yeah, I think so. I was confused by it because I saw this education fund surplus in it. So
Yeah,
that's
that's different. Yeah.
So what we're talking about is equalized pupil calculations, which will change the
weighting study,
education
yeah.
funding formula, which
Yeah.
is a different thing. I thought we were talking about like that magical $90 million and how we're going to.
We're going to talk about that next, but the equalized people came up and,
So yeah, I think it's unfortunate they use the term winners and losers. What they really should be saying is there are districts that are going to gain pupils and those that are going to lose pupils based on a calculation. It's winners and losers is a horrible term to use because it just connotes so many other things. But yeah, I think the free and reduced calculation is going to be probably even a bigger thing for us than ELL. It'll be because like right now, I think the weighting factor is like a 0.25. And if they do this, it'll be more like 2.5, which is a huge adjustment. And our free and reduced population percentage is pretty low compared to others.
Yeah, we're about 23% across the district.
Yeah. So instead of just multiplying by 0.25, it's going to be multiplying by 2.5, which for districts with a high FRL percentage, they're going to see a huge increase in their equalized pupil count. And we would not see that kind of increase.
And all of these things are connected because our free and reduced lunch rate is based on families filling out complicated paperwork, which some do and some don't. But when you don't charge for free and reduced, or when you don't charge for lunch, why would they fill out the paperwork? There's things that are connected here. And so if less people fill out the paperwork for lunch, then the number goes down even more. So that number is not necessarily a real number of our community.
And the piece you were talking about with small schools, it's not only, there's like two adjustments that are being projected or considered. One is based on the number of kids in a school, and the other is based on the population of the town. So whether they're going to do one of those or both of those, I don't know, but it's a hard thing to think about because in some ways, like Act 46 was trying to consolidate. Now this is kind of going the opposite direction of almost incentivizing separation. So it's a theoretical challenge to wrap your head around. And the only other thing I would say is what else was in there? Free and reduced.
They were asking about the thresholds, the
excess spending threshold.
Yeah.
Right.
They asked us to comment on that, which was just like define them better and get rid of the excess spending, deal with it in weights. And then what was the other one that they're talking about that they haven't defined yet? So the floor.
Oh, I think what they were debating is whether they should legislate a floor for education spending per pupil. Like a district can't come in at less than 12,000 in education.
Right? Yes, it is.
It can be
In
for
Franklin
some.
County, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know that I think that's a kind of a dangerous road to go down to dictate a minimum amount, because for example, some districts don't have the ability to carry over surpluses. So if they have a big surplus one year, they have to budget that as a revenue in the following year. And if they do that, all of a sudden their spending per pupil could be really low. But if there's a legislative limit, then they would have to artificially increase. So, you know, it's a little scary because of some of the scenarios that you can see.
And is the thinking behind that to make sure that if there's a redistribution, it's spent rather than
Yes.
a district coming in saying, okay, we'll just spend the same as we spent last year, but, you know, reduce our tax
Yes.
base.
There are several superintendents who are very concerned about that exact fact.
Amanda, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I always think that it seems hard now, but like this is the long-term plan for students in Vermont, right? And I think if we are serious about, you know, having an equity policy, that we are caring about the students, that is what drives us. It's like the volume. And I think the EL, you know, talking about the EL categorization, for example, and our increase, these are things that, you know, we can plan. Also, like, these are things that I've been pushing for, like more translation, more EL, you know, that are just in line with goals of districts that care about these populations. And I think that the hybrid model that the code study is proposing, which, you know, will allow for some district to say, well, you know, I prefer a grant than this hybrid model right now. I think that will give that flexibility. And I think with the surplus of money and all these conversations, this is the perfect time for Vermont to move towards an equity platform. So I would like to see it like, I would like to have this conversation more in depth, because I think it is a value system that, you know, like we need to be able to say as a school board and make that position. I think that's important.
I can go first.
I have a couple quick questions, and sorry, everybody, I was late. I misread the agenda. I didn't see the Roxbury part. So this is, I have to admit, in the past year, roughly a year, I haven't followed this as closely. I followed it really closely when it was first coming out and read the weighting study, and I thought that was great work. It flagged a lot of really important issues with inequities and how we fund schools in Vermont, like the devil's in the details. I feel like it spotlighted where that devil was, if you will. I was surprised because I went after last week, similar to Emma, I took some time and looked at the task force report, and I didn't take a ton of time. I just looked at like the highlights, the recommendations, things like that. You might have talked about this, so I apologize, but I noticed that ELL, it looks like they're not planning to add an extra weight or any extra money for ELL. Is that accurate?
That's the first proposal that's on the table.
They're still discussing it, is
Yeah.
my understanding. They're trying to figure out what to do.
Okay, because that was going to be that was like
That
the second
decision
part
has
of
not
that.
been made yet.
Okay, because I was really surprised to see that, and I found that to be very concerning just at a statewide level, that it didn't appear that from my quick review of this, that there was an added value for those students where there's clearly additional need and additional resources. So that was a concern I had with what I saw from this task force proposal. And then my second question is, I don't know if you have any insight into this, Libby. I've asked about this a little bit. I haven't been paying close attention to this, but it's in Senate Finance right now, and something that Senator Cummings repeatedly said is, we're just learning about this. I think she said we're like in kindergarten on this stuff. I realize that's an analogy, but do we think that this is actually going to pass this year?
Yes.
That's what I'm wondering. Okay.
Yes. I would be surprised if it didn't.
Emma?
So I mean, I don't feel like I'm an authority enough to speak on it, and that's why I'm really glad that somebody is going to be coming to speak at our next meeting. But just when I read through the materials, and when I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is close to the issue, the hybrid model that the coalition is proposing sort of is the best of both worlds in a way, where they do equalize, they do change the weighting across the board and include ELL, but then there's this special category of, I think they are referred to as low incidence schools. Is that right? Okay, so and I think Montpelier falls into that category, or there's a good chance that Montpelier would fall into that category. And then the grants would come into play. So, and it's, it all makes my head spin a little bit, but I'm glad we're going to be able to talk about it more. When I hear the conversation from Grant's brain, it's very heady and all about like budget and math. And I do want to sort of like steer the conversation towards our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, and really ask ourselves as a board and as a district, if these are our values as a community, to stand up for what's equitable for the most people and not just what's the best for our individual school district. And who knows, maybe it will be the best for our individual school district. But sometimes what's best for Montpelier School District isn't best for Winooski, and this type of legislation is not looking at individual school districts, it's looking at the whole state and sort of what's best for the most kids. And so that's where I would like to sort of steer the conversation more towards what our values are as a community and sort of which one of these proposals is best in line with our values.
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
we can continue that conversation next week or 2 weeks from now.
Would it make sense to invite Senator Perchlik back for that meeting to ask him questions related to this? He is the senator and he did serve on this task force, and he is on I'm just wondering. No.
I don't, or in my opinion, I don't think so. I think the coalition is very separate conversation than the task force itself.
Okay.
And there are some difference. The task force was not, some of those models was not part of the recommendations of the task force. It happened after they had already recommended, even though there was a lot of advocacy to change some of that. I'm talking specifically about the ELL categorization, that piece of the pupil weighting. So that was not the recommendation of the task force. And then the legislator asked Colby to weigh in, and that was like a follow-up report, and that's the conversation that's happened with all this proposal. So, I mean, the task force report, so I'm just saying that I think one step at a time, here from the coalition who's been doing the work, who represent some of these school boards, school districts that have a high ELL population. And some of them are, of those districts that voted on are wealthy too. It's not like all of them are represented. And so I haven't been part of this coalition, just to be transparent, because I didn't have time to put it in my brain. I was like, I cannot dedicate some time into that. I didn't get in their emails, but I just like, that's why I kept asking somebody from this district to receive, like to look in this, because I really couldn't figure it out in my brain. And then, so it was, I think the Colby report was very transparent and clear for me after the task force report. And so I have been listening to a lot of the public comments from Senator Ruth Hardy, of all the reports that they have given and feedback that they've gotten. So a lot of the questions.
What's the timeline in this from the whole thing?
I don't know. I know they're meeting on it regularly. They asked very specific superintendents to come today, actually, to testify, and like none of us could. And then they moved it to Friday. So it seems like they're
Removing.
Yeah, it sounds to me also like it's moving pretty quickly, and that, if we as a board want to be vocal to influence anything, that the time is sort of better happen quickly.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at the 2 weeks from now to get the coalition people to come in, but at the same time, they're moving ahead. I was just trying to gauge.
Yeah, and the
what-
lawmakers typically their sort of calendar, their mental calendar is they have this thing called crossover. I think this week it's probably the week before town meeting because they're actually off that whole week. So I think they typically try to sort of get things from one side of the body to the other, or at least get it like solidified. So this doesn't have a bill number yet. I think we figured out today, but that doesn't mean anything because clearly
Yeah.
there's like this momentum happening that like in the next couple weeks it's going to gel around.
There's probably gonna be a
something.
committee bill, I have a feeling,
And then it will have to go to
the House.
the House, and then they'll probably have a
Before that
conference.
crossover date.
And it seemed like from what our legislators were saying last week is the reason why it's in the Senate is because there are, it impacts different districts differently within each senator's district. Whereas for the House members, they may end up advocating for one versus another. So what I gathered from what they were saying last week, and this is just what I interpreted from what they said, is it seems like they're taking that strategy because the senators sit at a higher level and geographic. They cover a larger geographic area, so to try and avoid some of the like jockeying that might occur.
District level.
Yeah, thinking about it a little more broadly. But I'm very interested to see what happens with this.
How's enrollment in SNAP currently determined? Is it also,
Percentage of federal poverty level, I'm pretty certain.
but is it something that a family has to apply for, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Unless, what's the direct certifications, if a family applies through some direct certification, we can accept that. And I forget what
I'm
that's
not
called.
positive.
Yeah, it's if your gross household income is equal to or less than 185% of the federal poverty level. Or you have children and get the Vermont CITC, or income tax credit.
Are there members of this board or Libby, that have objections to the approach of the coalition's recommendation?
I don't feel that I can make it.
Can't
Haven't
say.
had that opinion
Need
yet.
more
It's
time.
still so much to absorb.
Yeah, I don't feel I fully understand it either. I mean, I'm definitely supportive of the concept. I mean, I do have a little bit of a fear that if we make our community more expensive, we're going to make it more elite. And, you know, are there proposals to deal with that? So, you know, Montpelier is already expensive already, and it's one of the reasons that, yeah, we have a population that's relatively privileged. If we become a more expensive community to live in because we have higher tax rates, that I think has probably the effect of making our community even more exclusive. So I would like to see, you know, how that's dealt with.
No, that question is like, how does, again, system of values, right?
Yeah.
They are we invest, let's say, we invest in this and then we look at other things that need to be cut to lower that rate, right? Like, it's not like, this is the only thing that's gonna increase our tax rate. This is why budgeting exists, and this is why you look at your whole picture, right? Again, it's a system of values about the students and like how we uphold that conversation.
I think if I may just add on, I appreciate the question because yeah, I'm feeling like feel like we need to have some thoughts about the 5 different versions of this that are being discussed in the committees each day. But I do want to make sure that whatever the weights are based on are objective and not subjective. So I do get worried if they're based on things that we can't quantify. You know, if we can't actually capture the actual need of our community in a number that translates to a weight, that's challenging. It'd be, you know, we need to be able to demonstrate a real need and not have it based on something that isn't necessarily reflective of the needs of our communities. So if we can't, if we're depending, I'm one of those parents, I get that form and I'm like, oh, thank God, I'm not filling this out. If those are the sort of things that our weight would be based on, that requires work or grant applications or that kind of stuff, then the less truly fair it is for the students. It needs to be based on actual information and actual need.
And that's a little bit of privilege, right? Being able to say.
Exactly.
I can't
Yeah.
do that.
Exactly.
And my concern is not those that don't need to, but those who can't, but would benefit from it.
Yeah, I want to be clear. My point was that
Yeah,
if we're depending on people having to take an action
right.
that they may not know about or may
Yeah.
not be able to take, and those are the numbers that our weights are based on, that's not really reflective of what the kids need, is all I'm saying. Any of those barriers to that access that are thrown in the way makes it harder to actually get. If it's a grant application and a particular district doesn't have someone who's capable of, you know, jumping through the hoops of a grant application, and that leads to the district not getting what they need, that's not fair. That's all. I want to be really clear. It wasn't about
No.
just forms,
I
but
know. Well,
any roadblock that can be put in place of
yeah. I mean,
showing the need is not really true access. Yes.
are there, if I may ask one more question?
Sure.
Might there be ways for some of these, for the board to come up with policies that allow us to assist in families and their need, or is that a possibility, or is everything mandated across the state equally?
I think we have to find out what the law is going to be first, and then figure out processes. Those would be more procedures than policies. That would be my take.
Awesome.
Yeah, many of the systems are created to stigmatize poverty. And that is what the whole process is, to apply for the free and reduced lunch, to apply for this service or this service is to be based whether or not you have the need. So it's like, it's thinking about those barriers more to support those families and change that conversation around the stigmatization that needs to happen. I mean, in a very small level, the work of the parents groups in the past year of changing that conversation around, like, we have, just the invitation to things that should be free for people to come in versus like pay $5 to fundraise, which limits somebody. Just little things that are shifting that stigma around poverty and access to this.
Well, I look forward to their presentation next week, and I think if there's anybody else that we could invite, if people feel that it's somehow biased or weighted in one direction or the other, if there was somebody else that we wanted to invite to sort of present multiple perspectives, I'm totally open to that.
I asked last week about, and I know that the legislature's joint fiscal office is stretched thin, so I don't, based on their response and based on the people I know who work there, I don't think we're gonna get anybody from there, but it would be great. And Brad James is probably stretched super thin. He's probably thinking, there's no way he's thinking he's gonna present on this just for our school board. It would be like, then make it available. It would be one presentation available to like every school board kind of thing. But I do think it would be helpful. I want to hear from this coalition. I appreciate what this coalition is trying to accomplish. My general thought is it would be helpful for us to have some additional information that's not from a 501c4 organization. Even though, I support many 501c4 organizations, that's kind of irrelevant. A 501c4 organization is advocating for something, and it would be great if we could get kind of a balanced overview of the situation, just like something that's like, here are the options on the table, here's what the legislature is thinking, here's what was proposed in this study, here are the main options that are on the table, and here's how they compare with each other, and here's how they impact these different populations. We've had that in the past. In an ideal world, that's how democracy would function. We'd have that information and would make a decision based on that information. Unfortunately, I'm not certain that that information is out there right now. Libby, Superintendent's Association, the SBA, I haven't seen them put anything together on this.
No, the Superintendent's Association is just responding to requests to testify. And it is based on money when we're testifying. You know, it's based on how things influence you financially. That's what they're asking us to testify on. They were very specific. And the reason why they're asking me to testify versus U32's superintendent, you know, like it's because of our specific numbers and our specific budgetary needs. So.
Yeah, so if you come up with anyone, I would say invite them to the meeting. You know?
I don't know. Andrew Stein, will come up with anyone, but if anybody else here does, I'm not really. Yeah.
I think it's important for the board to be clear about what your outcome is as well, because this is the legislature's job to decide on what's going to happen. And this board may be able to advocate for a position, but that would be what the board is doing.
Yeah.
Right. Is not simple advocacy, but that's what it is. There is no vote to be had here for the board other than do we advocate for a certain position or not.
Well, I think the request though is that my understanding though, Emma, what you're asking for, and Amanda, what you're asking for, correct, is that we join this organization, correct?
That we put our support behind their recommendation. Yeah.
Which would be advocacy.
Yeah. And from what I've heard, there's a possibility of 1 or 2 senators in our county being, deciding votes. So I think it would be
two of them are very, very critical.
So I think we are in a unique position as a school district that is seen as privileged, as a school district who's seen as a potential loser, and a district that's in the constituency of a couple of very prominent senators on this issue. So I think we're in a unique position to potentially make our voice heard. If you look at the list of school districts, I think it's very telling. The school districts that have already signed on to support this proposal, they tend to be more rural, lower income, more diversity districts. And so, just my gut feeling is like this could be an opportunity for us to stand in support of those other school districts who are really struggling. So I see it as an opportunity for us to stand firm in our values around equity. And, if I'm totally open to being like educated, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the issue. I would love for more people to come and talk to me. I'm only basing it on the research that I've done so far. And I felt pretty strongly based on the research I did and who I was speaking to. But if there's more input, I would love to hear it,
Yeah, I'd just like an overview for the board. That's where that's what I was asking the legislators last week, is if there was somebody who could.
Yeah, I think you're
You
getting
can
a report.
listen to all
Yeah.
the Senator Hardy's report on YouTube. There's Google Lights. She's testified in every committee in the past month about the task force. I would just say that in line with Emma's idea, like we need to be informed that for me, the conversation is not just about like here's equity, but like how it shows up in our district, not like, okay, like what does it mean? And then you can make a decision. Because I think it's important. I think that's what I kept asking is like, I don't really understand how the pupil weighting will impact us. I still don't know that. I still don't have those senses of financial. So I want to be informed about that. Like that piece, like what does it mean? Like what does it actually mean on the ground for someone that doesn't have the financial background to understand what the impact is? Like what does it look like? What are those scenarios? And so I think that's how we can get there, right? Like being able to actually know how it translates.
I want to be mindful of the agenda, and I feel like we have this on the agenda at our next meeting.
No, absolutely. I just want to stifle what was a good conversation. I think a good conversation. So let's talk about the education fund surplus. I think this might be an easier conversation. I'm certainly in support of reinvesting that in our schools. But I'll open it up to the floor. I think, given that, Burlington is in filings and we've we've got a, 100-year-old middle school that certainly could use a little TLC, and
The PCB law is significant.
the PCB law, we've certainly heard a lot about lead throughout, Vermont. It seems like there's a lot of good we could do to invest in our kids and invest in our infrastructure with $90 million other than have a gimmick for Phil Scott.
I have a question on that. When we talk about reinvestment, and maybe this is too early, but are there going to be any restrictions? Are there going to be any guidance around what we could do with it, what we can't do with it, or are we deciding who's?
We're not deciding
Yeah,
it.
so-
The governor and the legislature will be deciding it.
In terms of if it's decided that, if it was decided that it's going to be reinvestment, would the governor be kind of reinvesting in schools across the Vermont or in the kids? How
Well, what
would
his
that work?
proposal is in his budget address was to
To give it
do
back,
the
but
tax rebate.
I'm kind of flipping that. If it was decided that it's going to be reinvesting or reinvestment of funds, how would that, do we have any idea how that would work, how that money would come?
the legislature would decide. I believe they have the budgetary power.
Theoretically, it would lead to the following year, some kind of adjustment to the spending could be a certain way, but the tax rates wouldn't change. But I don't think that's really what's going to
I don't think that's how they would plan it. I mean, when I look at my crystal ball, that PCB law is significant and we'll have way more people in Macy's, as a result, if Burlington is any indicator of
Could you
that.
give us like a Twitter version of what the PCB law is? It's the polyfluoral whatever contamination in school buildings? Is that
Sure,
what it is?
yeah,
Got
poly
it.
whatever, yeah.
Or bunting.
Yeah, we got our environmental lawyer
So
right
it's a
here.
requirement for testing, and then theoretically, if the testing comes a certain way,
There's a requirement for testing, but there is no, and for remediation, but there's no budget to remediate. And that's
Remediation could be extremely expensive.
As we've learned from the Burlington example, it could potentially mean new schools across Vermont,
Yeah.
which are, let's face it, expensive, right? So that is significant. I've talked to the board on numerous occasions about the need to increase capacity across the state, particularly in central Vermont, for mental health support to schools. We cannot solve the mental health crisis that we see right now. Schools cannot do it without outside agencies. And so if you're gonna put it anywhere, put it in community mental health organizations to increase the capacity there. Other things I think about is that we will have a significant teacher shortage and administrator shortage coming up very quickly. And so how do we invest in teachers to get them to come to the state and want to be a teacher? Cutting pensions is not a good option for that. So that's another piece of it. Moving back to the equity conversation, how do we invest in Vermont so that we diversify our communities more? Because schools can't solve that either by ourselves. So how do we think about that? Because that's what's good for kids. So there's some things I'm thinking about with an ed surplus fund that doesn't have to do with myself as a taxpayer getting a $250 check in the mail.
And those are all well over 90 million bucks.
Oh, I know I know they are. So how do you?
Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, revenue PCB alone, if it's,
Gonna be way more than 90 million.
yeah, if it's a, pervasive problem.
If it was important enough to pass a law, then you need to pass something for
Yeah, it's a
remediation
nasty
efforts as well.
carcinogen.
Yeah, exactly.
Emma,
This idea, I don't actually know the proposal that's on the table. It's to give individual families sort of a rebate, a gift.
that's my understanding.
Okay, and so something that Governor Scott said many months ago when we were sort of in the depths of the pandemic, the early stages and depths, if that's a possibility. He said something to the effect of, they were about to get a whole bunch of federal money. And he said something like, I want to be able to look back on the way that we spent this money and feel like we made a lasting impact and remember what we spent the money on and look back and be able to say, wasn't that a great use of money? Look at what it did for us. And I don't think individual family rebates, you know, at the amount of money that we're talking, though I'm sure it would, you know, make an impact on a lot of individual families. I would much rather see the money be spent on something that makes like a broader impact for more people and is more lasting in the memory of Vermonters. So I will echo the sentiments of the person who spoke at public comment, and definitely in support of us advocating publicly for us to reinvest that money rather than give individuals a tax rebate.
Grant?
Just one other thought is that there is a certain amount of surplus that is expected to be in the budget because of the fact that the ed fund health could be really bad, and if something could turn sideways on you. And if you don't have that surplus to tap into, then like this year we had that big increase in the dollar yield. You could see a big drop in the dollar yield and tax rates could go through the roof. But having some surplus there so the tax commissioner could recommend using some of that to help control tax rates is good. So I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think the advocate position might be just don't give it all back and either reinvest, which might take some time to think about how, and also to leave some of it in there just as a control.
I mean, coming from the guy who has led this board and the district to have a very healthy capital plan and fund balance, right? It's like we've steered the ship to a place where, yes, we are saving money and we're having surplus, but we're saving that surplus and then we're reinvesting it. And I think that's been a very great strategy that has helped the condition of our schools and helped us through the pandemic and in a lot of ways. So I think we should stick with that philosophy.
You want to run for governor?
With Grant's philosophy.
Oh my gosh, he'd stand up there.
To be clear, the general amount of fund balance that we had to help with that is pretty much the statutory amount that's required in the ed fund as a reserve fund for the exact type of crisis that we found ourselves in. And we actually drew all of that down plus some as a state during like what it was mid 2020. That was crazy. But then because of all the federal money, what that did was huge on so many levels. It kept people spending money, which kept sales and use tax up, which was huge for the ed fund. Like sales and use tax revenue, all of it goes to the ed fund, and that was really, really big. But also all of the federal dollars that this district and many other districts got. So,
Yeah, I think the difference being what Emma was saying though is that before we knew the federal money was coming, there was not a moment where I, as a superintendent, needed to worry that we couldn't do something for our community that was needed, you know? And even now, we need KN95 masks, Deb, go order them. You know, like it's not a question for us because of our healthy fund balance, which is due to Grant's beautiful financial work. But that's not the same in every district.
No.
You know, across the state.
Rhett and then Amanda.
I'm wondering, I'm thinking about the staffing questions and I'm thinking about the lack of people that are able to serve in our community mental health agencies. And I'm wondering about scholarships and educational programs, whether they be at the college level or even at a tech center level that will prepare people to assist. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but $45 million to help boost programs in the tech center that can get kids as individual assistants into schools, starting their careers, and whether it's a 2-year associate program that gets somebody into a situation where they can go work at our community mental health agencies. That agencies pay really poorly. They have no ability to retain. The need is just ballooning, and even for substance use problems, that's ballooning during this pandemic situation. So I'm curious of what are the sort of minimal educational achievements that people need to get so that they can support the schools, not necessarily as a full teacher, but quicker, you know, and potentially have a job with a community mental health agency that allows them to get into the schools and be a partnership. One of the problems is DCF is over here, corrections is over here, education, the Department of Education is over here, economic services is a different group, and they're all attempting to play a role in supporting people that have great needs. They have different buckets that their money is coming from. They can't coordinate, they can't work together. If they could work together and it costs us $45 million, that could potentially have a lasting benefit for the state. Just to coordinate agencies and their ability to respond to some of these problems. Those are some thoughts that I've had about how to reinvest that money to support the community.
All right. In terms of, Amanda, sorry.
But, I think there's a conversation around what are the themes that are across districts, right? Which, I can make a list of the things that impact us, that impact other districts as well. That's like bullying, hazing, harassment, mental health systems that are flow, restorative justice systems that are flow, that leads to corrections and leads to policing. The lack of summer camps that support students who are behind, literacy issues around testing and all of that, curriculum development, retention of BIPOC teachers, because I think that a lot of the conversations around let's diversify, but we're losing BIPOC people because the culture in this district are not good. We just had 3 BIPOC teachers quit in the last week because the culture is so against for them. So I think not in this district, but
to be clear, back
they're not here. But so I think that like there's a system shift that needs to happen around like the piecemeal approaches to the change that we need to make. There's $95 million in one of the affinity spaces. Somebody had a great idea of hiring for the district 2 people that can evaluate the mental health system of our community. Like who's there? How do we join the system together? How do we support the school as a community-driven thing? You hire someone to do the systems thinking, collaborate with all the groups that are in existence. A model like that can like be replicated in all the other districts where there is a lack of watch to mental health. Like all of the systems, we have really brilliant people in many parts of the state that are working alone. So how do we like get them together to bring them? So I think our systems are flawed because they're not connected, because they are disjointed. And we can buy a lot of infrastructure, but for what our students are not in safe. It's like the work that we need right now is I think it's like a system shift that we need to do. It's like how to think about schools, not as just like these schools, but as a community place where all these connections happen. And that the job is not just for the school, the job is for all of us in these communities to come together to make that. So I see money and I'm like, here, restorative systems. There's great people doing great work, but not everybody has the privilege to know them.
I'm surprised I don't see a coalition with that similar kind of coalescing for this topic. It's almost like this is like a really immediate need where there needs to be some sort of an entity, and perhaps the school boards association or the principals or superintendents that has the sort of, we can give you those things that the education fund desperately should be paying for. I haven't seen that the way that I've seen a coalition with actual concrete ideas for the weighting. And I do worry, just based on what I'm seeing in my limited oversight, I'm not seeing the specificity of that, and therefore in lieu of that, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. I'm worried about where this is gonna go. A very unhelpful comment, but
And to be clear, this night, just so everyone is aware, the ed fund, there's 5% reserve in there, and there's additional reserve, and then there's addition, this unreserved, unallocated $90 million. So it really, and there's a lot, I'm sure there are a lot of legislators that also have ideas for this. So I appreciate what Jill's saying, because our school board isn't gonna have much influence over this, but like the VSBA school board speaking as one, saying, these are important issues that you could be using this money for. That's how, that'll ring, that'll convey the message clear to legislators and the governor and administrators will listen. All the schools are saying, hey, we're on board. We're on board.
Maybe.
Maybe not. Better chance than if we're just speaking as one of like 50 some school districts, or now it's less than that, isn't it?
But I think there is a chance to have our voice there, to say this is what we see, and then maybe other people will echo. I'm in the bullying, harassment, and hazing council, where just submitted recommendations to the secretary of French who asked, like, what do we do with this one? I was like, oh, here's a list of all the things we need to do. We need you to hire blah, 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 blah. So I think, being able to have groups or school boards that say, here's some of these things, and then you can, we can ask this coalition of other school boards to do the same, or to like join. So I think if we wanted to advocate, I think there are ways to do it. The school board association has other interests as well, so I think.
So I think we need to kind of move the conversation along is, we obviously want to do something, what's something that's doable that we can do that will have some sort of impact. Is it a letter just from the board to the governor? Is it reaching out to the school boards association to see if there's a coordinated effort we can join? Is it both?
I think it's both.
Who wants to take the lead on either one of those?
I nominate Jim Murphy.
Jim Murphy has very little time.
For which one?
I could reach out to the school boards if someone wants to put together some sort of letter.
I'll do it.
I can just reach out to Sue and see if there's a coordinated effort to get back. Okay.
Thanks, Amanda.
And our senators.
Thanks,
Yeah. All right. Any more on this, or is that kind of a good next step?
We don't have to, we don't need to like pass a resolution or anything like that.
I don't think so. I mean, I think we'd want to, I think once we have a draft, we'd want to review it and make sure we're comfortable with it.
Okay. And what's the timeline on that decision? Do we know?
On what?
Oh, that's going to be,
That's
that's probably going to be
Like
in the big bill. So that's May or June.
Okay. So we've got
so we've
plenty of
got
time
some time.
to craft the perfect letter.
Yeah, and
Well, we want to start weaving the
Well, we do
narrative.
it the night before.
you might also, yeah, I'm just thinking, you might want to.
Letter to the editor.
No. No. I think we start with this. This sounds good. Yeah.
So next item is update on the community input from the board's outreach on the SR. Is that you,
Well,
Amanda?
should we do the executive session for the appointments to the visioning committee?
We can do that now if we want to. I'm happy. I'm good with that.
What do
I
you
think we
want?
Say, move it to the end, so then
Yeah.
Yeah.
we can pick up the camera.
Okay,
They don't have to wait for it.
Yeah.
okay.
Is that you, Amanda?
Yeah.
Yes. it is.
Yes, because on this Kristen one too, but
Kristen's hanging out with
So
activities.
I would say that we had 3 really successful, beautiful affinity spaces with lots of great ideas, which I share with you. I hope that you read them. If you didn't, you should. And then maybe share with the administrators. And Kristen, me and I met our equity committee with the idea that we still want to do a little more. We still want to reach out to the families who are struggling financially, to just hear their voice, what ideas they have. And so Mia is going to develop a flyer where Mia can have a session or 2. We wanted to offer it to you all if you want to have a lunch session, so I can put in a flyer with a Zoom, just be like, meet with the school board and give just people more chances. I did develop some surveys for each of the affinity spaces to kind of resend to families who didn't make it, say, hey, you still have time to weigh in, give your voice, here's the feedback in case you're missing something. I mean, generally, I think it's kind of like the echo, many of the conversations are echoes of things we've heard here, so we had special ed, literacy, BIPOC, LGBTQ, and neurodiverse. So we have 5 affinity spaces. I led the BIPOC, neurodiverse, LGBTQ, and then Mia did the literacy. And then Kristen did a Roxbury little session with the PTO. So those are there, and Libby, we've shared that with you. And yeah, I mean, in summary, I think it's some of these topics, right, around restorative justice, around curriculum development, like concerns around being able to be seen in terms of the BIPOC, LGBTQ community, even the disability folks, about how we talk the stigma and all of that, about access to interventions early before, it triggers the law, what we can do in terms of, anyways, you can read it and it's there. The question we had for Libby is if you wanted a more formal report, we could do. I did get from the AOE the dates of the SR3. And so just what we wanted to ask you about that timeline. If I can.
The application's due in March.
May 22nd is what I got from
No,
the
it's March
AOE.
29th.
It's March, yeah.
Oh, is it March 29th?
We just had a meeting about it this morning.
Okay. For the SR3. I just got that yesterday from Jill. Okay. So the question to you is, what do you need from us, and how would you like to incorporate those comments? And if we get more in the next couple of weeks, or do you not want us to get it more?
We're at a stage where we need to start making some decisions. It has to go through a public comment period. The plan has to go through a public comment period. So we need, and we need time to actually write the grant. So we're pretty much, if you think about where we are in the school year with February break coming up very quickly, we're pretty much at the point where we need to put a plan together to present to the community. So there isn't a whole lot of time left.
Okay.
When you think about all of those things. I'm curious how many people were at each meeting.
I can share. So for the BIPOC, it was like 6 families. There's about 11. No, I don't know if there is because me I did that. The neurodiverse is about 11. I have to look at the numbers, but it was a small number, but pretty representative of the same conversations that happen in this district. So nothing I was surprised about.
What I'll do is I'll put that Google Doc, because anytime it's updated, I know Kristen had to put some things in from RVS. Anytime it's updated, I'll just put that link into the public plan document that's on the website. And so when anybody updates it, it will just automatically update for the
That's
public.
great. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, so we will continue to try to do it, just a few more, and then give that Google form so that people, I'm not sure if you had a chance to actually send it to, like, the flyer to the groups that you have. You said that you had some listservs.
But did you ask Anna to do it?
I am not sure if I actually did, if it was in an email, or if it was like this.
Sure.
So maybe she can send us still the survey with it. I have 4 Google Forms set up with links to that specific affinity space so that people can read what was said and add more but not in that condensed one. And then I will take that. So you can set those 3. Is that okay if I send them to Anna?
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions for Amanda or questions of the process? Great. Yeah, no, thank you for doing that, with Amanda, and I know Mia's not here, as well. Finance.
Sorry, just asking Kristen if I missed something. Did I miss something, you think?
Sorry, I'm catching bits and pieces. I have an executive assistant in the room with me right now. Yeah, I think so that there's just going to be some outreach to families experiencing financial hardship. And I think what we talked at the meeting is that if there was a way to send that opportunity out, like Libby, if you had, I don't know if that kind of data gets collected and there's a way to kind of anonymously send that out, like if that was part of kind of the outreach that you did over the summer, but that there was an interest to figure out if we could get that in front of folks that, you know, it would be relevant for, you had an avenue.
I did check with Anna to see if she has she was having internet problems at home, so she may or may not be on, but yeah, I have to check with Anna to see if she has a listserv for that particular group. I'm not sure if she did or not.
Okay.
That's pretty FERPA protected information.
Yeah. And we had discussed that too. And just, you know, knowing that that's 1 moment, please. That's a tough label. And so we just want to be really sensitive to that. But because of, you know, that experience that we wanted to be able to hear back from folks and how those circumstances could be met and could be sort of supported by what the plan includes.
And I did have a question for Lily around the thinking for that SR3 funding because that came out a lot around the summer programs. And if that is like a thought right now.
We actually have money left over from the SR2 budget line for summer programming. So that's an SR2, not an SR3.
But for the intervention, not for like the summer camps.
We haven't talked about intervention. It's not something that's happened before Montpelier-Roxbury. I'll tell you, there's a lot of research that says it has to be done in a certain way for a certain length of time in order to have any kind of impact on students. I go back and forth if we want our own teachers to do that kind of work. Our own teachers are burnt out and that's their time to relax. So
unless they're working a second job, which
exactly, which
some do, yeah. But and often that second job is kind of fun for them, right?
Yeah, or at least they're switching gears.
Yeah, it's switching gears and all that kind of stuff. So I go back and forth on it.
Is there something that we can ask them so that we don't decide for them? So, I mean, it's not even the question, so 2 questions. 1 question is whether it's our teachers. 2 questions, the second question is like, do we have a program? And then we ask other teachers from our districts to serve our kids who are in real need to catch up. So, just a question I have around the summer interventions and what's coming. Especially because now all the summer camps are coming up and people are filling them.
I think there's lots of different perspectives on that piece. And so I'm not sure. Right now, it's not dedicated to intervention services, but to enrichment opportunities.
6 years of high school coming up. How to catch up before, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of, the idea of catch up is arbitrary as well.
Can I add something? Because I realized I sent something to Kristen last week, but I wanted to add this on because it's based on a question she asked and it pertains to funding for some things that we've talked about the past couple of weeks. Recreational cannabis is set to, that market is set to open this year, and 6% of all recreational cannabis sales are to be used in law for after school and summer education programs. And in FY25, once the market has ramped up more, it's forecasted to generate between roughly $4 million and $11 million a year. That's the sales tax component of cannabis sales. I just wanted folks to know that the first talk about money for after school and summer programming over the past 2 weeks. And I realized I just sent that to Chris and I didn't send that to him.
Yeah, I mean, for the summer programming, we've never done it before. So, and we're not a 21C district. So the challenge is that we don't have a position to run summer programming. So that's what, if we got extra money to do that, that would be awesome. Because we have a very limited slate of actors who are working in the summer right now. So Matt Link ran our sports camps last year, and he's ready to do so again this year. But he's running sports camps because that's his thing, as the athletic director. If we want to do other things, or the board wants us to do other things, then we would need to hire a position to do that.
Yeah, and I'd have to look in law. The law says how that money is to be. There's like some structure. It's loose though. It might just be like an AOE grant program or something along those lines. I can't remember. Anyways, it's one bad.
Yeah, that's helpful to know that money's being well spent.
It could potentially in the future.
Yeah, exactly. So now the long-awaited finance committee update.
Annika, take it away.
Giving up the, okay.
You were the one who wasn't looking at anybody else, Annika. Everybody looked at you.
Yeah, I was looking at my computer. I thought that was a safe thing to do. All right, well, we have the audit report that I guess everybody got it or we're getting. Just to summarize that, and just to, I guess, kind of being a conduit from Grant to you guys, we've had a very successful audit. The report's been fantastic. The team, Grant and his folks, have done a fantastic job. There have not been any corrections, or I don't know the exact language, Grant, but
There were no
findings.
findings. Yeah. There were 4 or 5 things that were listed, and Grant went through each one of them, and we were satisfied with the reasoning and what Grant had told us. So all in all, just a very successful audit report. As far as the Q4 final 2021 Q4 final report, there were no changes that we needed to make or be made. So the budget number, we were 99, is it right? 96.31% in terms of expenditures and 99.5% in terms of revenue. The surplus was a little more than what we had anticipated, which is in a way good thing. And there were various reasons for it, but they all made sense. And then finally moving on to the Q2 2022 numbers, the expenditures are almost in line with what we think there were a couple of categories which we are a little higher than what we thought we would be, and a couple of them lower. Again, I can go into details, but all within reason and all what we anticipate would be similarly revenues. We were expecting about 52, averaging 52.5% in terms of overall numbers at this point, and we're at actually 1.94. So we're very close to where we would like to be. Grant or anybody else, Jill, have I missed anything?
No, that was well done. And it all is in your, it is in our packets.
Yeah, and one of the things of the audit is we need to have received the letter. That's what we need to acknowledge that we have received that letter and the packet. So that's it.
So we do need a motion to approve our.
The two financial statements.
Yeah.
Great. Well, any questions on that presentation before we get to a motion? Do I have a motion to approve?
Kristen, do you have a question?
Kristen, do you have a question?
She thumbs up.
No question.
All right.
All set. Thanks.
Motion to approve the, should we do two separate motions or can we do them all as one? Let's do them as two, just to be extra careful. Motion to approve the FY21 fourth quarter financial report. So moved. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Bye.
And a motion to approve the FY22 second quarter financial report. So moved. Second?
Second.
That's deja vu there. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Bye.
Unanimous. Great, so now we can, we need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of appointing committee members to the visioning committee. And I guess a question, can we bring Nathan, do we want to bring Nathan in as a consultant, which I think we're allowed to do?
Yeah, but the purpose would be to discuss candidates,
Yeah,
not to
so
appoint them.
I would suggest bringing Nathan in.
Yes.
To discuss the appointment of candidates, and then we will come back out of executive session and appoint candidates. So do I have a motion for that purpose?
To go to executive session to discuss the appointment of vision candidates.
No. Oh, discuss the appointment?
Yeah. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Yeah, we can give you a moment. Is it going to take? Well, should we go elsewhere or?
You're done with me?
Yes.
It's gonna take.
Yeah, we can go down to another.
Yeah, we can go down to another room and we can bring the Zoom
Brad,
and
is
put.
that copy of
Can you
the
just create a breakout room
financial
for Nathan?
audit? Can I